Welcome everyone to day 2 of InMobi's 2022 APAC Gaming Summit. My name is Srishna and I head integrated marketing for APAC at InMobi, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all. Today, we're kicking things off as we deep dive into the world of gaming in Australia. Before we get started, the same house rules from yesterday do apply. In case you have any questions during our session, please drop them in the Q&A window and we'd be happy to take them. If you have a friend who you think would like to join this session, don't worry, it isn't too late. We're dropping a link for them to join. In case you experience any other technical difficulties during the session, do drop those in the Q&A window as well, and we try our best to resolve those for you. With that, let's get started. Over to you, Matt. It's time to help the industry to level up.
Hi everyone, my name is Matthew McGinley and I'm the Head of Publisher and Telco Development at InMobi. And I'm going to be talking to you about something quite near and dear to my heart today, and that is gaming, or how we can captivate people, and especially Australians, in mobile gaming. We've had, if you consider the last 2 years, even the last 6 months in gaming, it's gone through some rapid change. We've seen, companies like Microsoft acquire Activision for, quite a lot of money. You've seen Netflix leap headfirst into the world of gaming. And so in my 9 years at InMobi, there's never been a more exciting time to be talking about this space, but also understanding the customers and how to activate, plan, and draw insights from this space now. As I mentioned, my name is Matt McGinley. I'm the Head of Publisher and Telco Development. Been here for 9 years, 10 years in mobile ad tech. But I also sit on the IAB Gaming Council in Australia. So I've got some unique insights on the work that we've been doing as part of that council in this presentation today. Look, a quick agenda. We'll go through where we've come from in the world of gaming and where we are now. We've got some great insights from a couple of external and internal pieces there, but more looking at perspectives. What do developers need to see? What do consumers want to see in this space, but also what are brands saying, which is quite important. I'll take you through how you can capitalize on this space today. What are 2 things you can do today to really capitalize on this inflection point and this change we're seeing in mobile gaming, and then we'll finish off with 3 key takeaways on what you should sort of draw from this and where to go from there. Look, I've started with that image that you're seeing on the screen there on the mobile device. In Australia, gaming reaches quite a lot of people. There's some insights and research that suggest that it's more popular than free-to-air TV, which is, arguably one of the fabrics of society in Australia. Some people say that reaches, 17 million Australians per month in just in gaming. From a mobile perspective, it tends to reach anywhere between 12 and 13 million Australians per month. So its size now warrants a discussion or more of a consideration of where to go. So look, as I was putting this presentation together, I realized that I've actually been playing mobile games for almost 20 years. I all started with this little icon that you're seeing on screen here today, and I would hazard a guess there would be a few nods in the audience resonating with this game. Snake on the trusty Nokia 3310, otherwise known as the brick back in the day. Look, that was 25 years ago, right? Which is quite staggering to think about. Nokia did something amazing at the time. They preloaded this game on their new devices, and at the time it was reaching over 400 million people on the planet of the phone market, of the smartphone market back then. And I think, look, what they probably failed to understand is, in the years that led up to the iPhone launch, is they failed to understand the innovation that this had caused and where to go from there. Where to meet that customer innovation or that customer mindset head on with innovation and continue that innovation head on, right? If we fast forward to 2012, the mobile application was roaring back then. The iPhone launch in the preceding years, a company called Supercell launched Clash of Clans. Now, within 6 months of that game launching, it reached the #1 spot on the App Store and the Google Play Store. And one of those games that had a hybrid approach to in-app ads and in-app purchases to monetize and produce revenue. At the time, the game itself was making $3 million per day in-app purchases. Staggering to think about. And this is probably when we all say to ourselves, we should have made a game back when it was emerging. But how they were able to do that is they actually met that customer mindset with innovation. They didn't let that innovation pass them by. They were able to do that because they understood their customer base so very well. They understood that myself on an iPhone was more likely to purchase that weapon or that army or that in-app purchase at that point of time based on these preceding data sets. So very clear understanding of their customers and the psychology behind their customers. If you look at 2016, Niantic launching Pokemon Go, and I think we can all fair to say it's thankful that they launched pre-pandemic. We also those viral videos of people going in Manhattan in New York just catching Pokemon. Widely viral and energetic and an exciting time to see. What this game gave us though was a rise to accessible AR and VR. Right, it brought about this technology in a more en masse way. Arguably, Meta, Snapchat were looking to launch strategies and develop strategies around, their AR, the metaverse, things of that nature. I think Pokemon Go actually gave that rise to that accessible AR technology for the masses that sort of catapulted those strategies to take place and take hold. And if we look at today, we're seeing Netflix leap headfirst into the world of mobile gaming. Look, that quote you're seeing on screen there was a direct quote from their press release on their website. New ways to experience entertainment on mobile. And look, they've been quite busy. They recently acquired, I think, their third gaming studio this year. A local games developer by the name of Pickpock in New Zealand has launched or is launching 2 games in this year. And look, why that's interesting is Pickpock is your typical gaming studio, quite widely popular, but they make revenue from in-app ads and in-app purchases, something that is currently not available on the Netflix games platform. So it's going to be really interesting to see and understand how these game developers monetize this space in a new ecosystem than they hadn't before. And now we obviously see the launch of Netflix ads or basic with ads, as they call it. And look, do I think Netflix is going to start pushing through the standard monetization or the standard ad formats in their gaming apps? Probably not. They're going to do it in a way that caters towards their strengths. They're very good at understanding their customers, like we saw with Clash of Clans and Supercell. They're not going to do the standard form of advertising. They're going to do it in a way that meets their customers' mindset and their customers' psychology in an intuitive manner. I think it's important to understand, though, that it is still very much in early days. Right? If we look at global daily active users in one of Netflix games' flagship games, and that was Stranger Things 1984, 46,000 people per day are playing that game. In Australia, it's about 609 people. It's not really a scalable area that they can look to deploy, advertising yet. By contrast, if we look at Clash of Clans, 22 million daily active users on the planet. So quite a long way to go. But given the amount of acquiring and hiring of people in the Netflix games catalog, it's definitely a vision for them that we should definitely be watching closely from the sidelines. So taking a step back and looking at the perspectives of those key stakeholders and what do developers need to see. Look, it's quite clear that an in-app ads and in-app purchase model, it works. The overwhelming majority of developers believe in-app ads actually improve player retention without detracting from the game experience. But it's quite clear that, and for some time, this is a research piece in the UK in 2019, that they've been trying to develop advertising to be native to the in-game experience. In this example, you can see here a fortune teller telling visions of another world where it shows a form of advertising and obviously a lot of data and learnings preceding that. So it's quite clear that they've always trying to develop their need for advertising, balance that with an in-app ads and in-app purchase model ecosystem, but do it in the way that speaks towards their customers' mindset and preference. When we come to customers as well, a lot of these insights quite validate probably what we're all thinking. Right? What do customers want? They do not want an overload or gameplay disruption. You can see some quotes there. People, they understand the value exchange in ads in their favorite and loyal gaming apps. They can justify the ads to themselves. They understand that they're there for a particular reason to support their studio. But they do want to see that in a small, non-intrusive manner, not affecting their gameplay. We actually ran a research piece last year and found that the heavy majority, 94% of mobile gamers, prefer to see an ad as a method to progress through the game. So there's a preference there when it's done authentically and not disrupting their gameplay. Look, it's quite interesting. Why do they play? We've seen that gaming has accelerated throughout the pandemic, both in time spent, the size, the games themselves. But what's actually happened with the last 2 years is it's accelerated the reasons why we play games. You can see a quote here from a research piece from the IGEA. A female 22 household of 5 in regional Queensland. I play because my partner plays and wants to be able to play with him. It's a way for us to connect. Now, that connectiveness is a core reason why people play mobile games today. You have to understand, that the overwhelming majority of mobile games are your casual, hyper casual, designed for fun. Puzzle games, board games, Words with Friends, Candy Crush, Clash of Clans. They're designed for competitiveness, but also connectiveness amongst their friends and family. What was interesting part of that research, however, was the reasons why people play games is also for stress release, relief. They're looking at things of, keeping themselves mentally healthy, becoming motivated. Over a third of respondents from that research piece said that they use games and apps specifically designed for health and fitness during that time. 24% played mobile games for stress relief. So I think it's really important to understand that the reasons why we play games has evolved. It's no longer the male 18 to 24 that is only playing video games, that is only playing a certain type of game. The diversity in people that are playing games has increased, and also the reasons why, as you can see here. Look, we also ran a piece of research last year to understand why Australians are playing games. We saw some differences from a male and female perspective. Obviously entertainment, relaxation, to improve skills, compete. We're at that sort of top. But you can see on the bottom there, connecting with friends and family. A sense of community, virtual socialization was core across males as well. So that connectiveness is clear, and that's not going anywhere, right? I think what's the last 2 years has given us is a lack of that connectiveness, and we're seeing that increase in areas of gaming and other forms of entertainment, but mostly in that sort of gaming ecosystem for sure. And lastly, the perspective that is probably the more interesting one, given the audience, is what are brands and buyers saying? Look, as part of the IAB Gaming Council, we ran a research piece at the start of this year, a state of the nation, understanding, from 80 advertising decision makers in this market, what are they saying in terms of game advertising? What are they saying in terms of the drivers, the barriers, what formats they're intending to use, and a whole suite of questions that need to be answered. So 3 things here. Look, formats intended to use, overwhelmingly 68% of respondents intend to use mobile game ads in the next year, which is great to see. Metaverse activations came out on second place, whereas last year was at the bottom. So that's obviously quite an interesting space to watch and explore. And then you have your typical areas that have also catapulted in the last 2 years: streaming, adjacent display and video, direct in-game product placement, sponsorship, live streaming video, for example. But mobile games is the clear winner there. And I think given the breadth and scale and diversity that the mobile gaming ecosystem has, there is a huge opportunity to do this authentically and right. Secondly, what are the key drivers, right? Things like effective at brand building, incremental reach, the innovative ad offerings that this space has, the diversity of gaming audiences, as I was mentioning, the storytelling aspect. A lot of these areas speak towards, a space in gaming that is probably not seen to be. Gaming has always had an overwhelming majority of performance advertisers recognizing the value that this space drives for other gaming apps and more. What we're seeing now is a resurgence or a rise of brand building and brand advertisers exploring this space. if you're playing Candy Crush and you see an ad on a rewarded video ad slot for another game, that's expected. When you start to see brands that I want to see, like Ford, for example, or a retail brand like Nike, for example, it breaks through that clutter, and it does so in a very targetable manner, right? So that brand building, that reach and the diversity, the storytelling is becoming clear in the drivers of game advertising. And look, conversely, in the questions again that need to be answered, the key barriers to game advertising. Naturally, when considering any space, you want to see as a marketer evidence of effectiveness for brand or ROI. You want to see that it's going to work, for your brand. Interestingly, secondly, and probably more and the most important is how it works in combination with other media. It's a great question to ask and a difficult one to answer. And the way I would sort of look at that is understanding how you consider other forms of media to begin with. Taking that same approach with gaming and understanding where the strengths lie in this space, and also the innovation that is occurring to meet that media planning from a holistic standpoint. Lastly, look, brand suitability. Completely understand that. Gone are the days of looking at the only games out there to advertise violent shooter games, role-playing games, typically designed for that male 18 to 24. As I said before, that diversity in games has increased massively, right? And lastly, difficulty and expense in creative assets. That could be a misconception of jumping into this new space if you hadn't before, and understanding, okay, do I need to brief my creative agency and exploring and creating all these new assets? Look, the answer is no. Your same assets can be easily repurposed, if not, simply repurposed to drive those objectives that you're wanting to see in this space. So quite a lot of areas in that report. I highly recommend downloading that report. It's got a lot of interesting insights from the buy side perspective on game advertising. So, how do you capitalize on this? It's obviously a very, very clear and exciting space from the outset. We know that it's quite big. We know that it reaches the overwhelming majority of Australians on a daily and weekly basis. But where do you start, right? It's important to understand that from a marketer's perspective, simply leaping into every single area that is new and shiny it can be difficult and dangerous, right, for investment and resource. But where do you start? So we've got two examples here of where you can. And look, it's important to understand, as per the IAB Gaming Council, we classify gaming in three areas: around the game, in the game, and away from the game. Now, away from the game is things like sponsorships, content pieces with influencers. Wherein Mobi specializes in today is around the game, and I'll get into what that is in a second, and in the game as well. So look, we'll start with around the game. And look, this is your typical display video native, rewarded ad slots that have been around for some time. We're going to talk today about one of those areas, and that's Playables. My time at Mobi for 9 years, I've seen a lot of clients, understand the gaming space, but when they do so in the playable space authentically, it drives some pretty impressive results. And I've got a couple of examples of what that is now. But look, ultimately, what a playable experience is, it's designed for fun, right? It's designed to have your brand front and center in a playable, experience, in a gamification experience, but doing so that doesn't disrupt that gameplay. It uses insights from the gameplay of your audience to feed into the creative experience. And again, doing that in an authentic manner can produce some pretty interesting results. Look, one of those results here is from our partners at Arnotts. They wanted to launch a new product, the Shapes Extreme. I think what was really interesting here is we created a game here. We had to simply slide the shapes to shoot in that character's mouth. But this actually mirrored the TVC, and mirrored the TV communication messages in an authentic manner. The TVC was literally a guy sitting at the end of a dinner table, having shapes blown into his mouth because of the extreme nature of that flavor, right? So we made the game, did a piece of research off the back, and 88% of exposed respondents agreed that they would like to try the new Shapes Extreme product, which is a big win for the brand, big win for the agency as well. And again, the key thing here is not making a playable experience for the sake of, but doing it in an authentic manner. Next is an example from our partner here at Unilever, for the new Cornetto disc launch. And look, again, here, the key word being authentic, we mirrored the overarching comms message here inside a playable ad experience that was on brand, right? Look, it was a standout campaign for us. In just over a month, we had over 250,000 gameplays. Almost 5,000 people shared this on Facebook. And remember, keeping in mind, this is an ad. When you're sharing an ad on Facebook, you've done something there that latches onto their psychology, meeting that customer first mindset with a piece of innovation head on, right? But what was a clear message? Well, the clear winner here was the dwell time. Over 8 minutes with an ad. You can't say too much about 8 minutes dwell time with advertising in this day and age. Now, this is now content that you own. When it reaches that dwell time of 8 minutes, considering that the average TVC length 15 to 30 seconds, it's now a piece of content that you can distribute. And look, the content distribution is the programmatic ecosystem, right? You have tools, tech, talent, at your disposal here to use data, audiences, optimizations to really get the results you're wanting. Again, when it's done in an authentic manner. Look, we ran a piece of research here. 73% of exposed respondents said that they were likely to buy the new Cornetto disc. So again, a big win for the brand and the agency there. Look, next is Nike. And look, this is quite an interesting one. Over the retail period, we were launching the new Nike Custom ID product, building your own shoe. We created this playable experience to design or allow the user to design their own shoe and then proceed to the website to then purchase that item. Again, doing so in an authentic manner, not doing this just for the sake of, or not creating a gamified experience or a playable experience just for the sake of. It contained over 62,000 combinations, and again, an average dwell time of above 1 minute. So a clear winner in terms of the optimization piece, but also the people that we were reaching for that piece of advertising. And look, it's quite interesting. Like, this format has been around for some time, right? It's important to note in the IAB research, Playables were near the top in terms of intended to use formats for the first time, and also intended to use again. So they're almost like the sleeping giant amongst gaming formats. When they're done correctly and right, they produce some really impressive results from a business outcome standpoint. And look, we're seeing this across multiple verticals. Auto, entertainment, travel. Fashion is an interesting one. Fashion, is a space that otherwise would not have considered gaming, let's say, in the last 2 to 3 years, but that now is, and doing so in a way that is, again, authentic and meeting their customers with an innovation that speaks towards their psychology. Burberry here launching its first fashion game, obviously very addictive to the audience and the product that they were pushing, but doing so in that authentic manner. Secondly is education, right? The education vertical, especially in Australia, is a challenging one to reach and convert, potential students, both from an international lens and also local. Swintopia, Swinburne, definitely look it up. It was a virtual world that sort of flipped the orientation week on its head and allowed users to explore orientation and what courses and classes they wanted to pick, but inside that playable experience, which produced some pretty impressive results as well. And next we come to in-game or in the game advertising. Now, I think what's clear is, going back to the perspectives we were talking about, what do developers need to see, what do consumers want to see? There's an inflection point. They both want the same thing. They both want, a lack of or no disruption to their gameplay. They understand the value exchange of advertising. Developers understand that it's a necessity to grow their app, grow and retain customers in their app. So there's this inflection point that we come to, right? Now, what this inflection point has given a rise to is this innovation you're seeing on screen here, into in-game advertising or blended in-game video and display. All of the advertising you're seeing on screen in this virtual world is now accessible programmatically. So it's a huge opportunity for brands to capitalize on this, right? The same games that you know and love, different games, new games that are coming out, now contain innovative ad formats and offerings that can, speak towards that customer mindset and need and want of a developer head on. So look, a couple of examples, here as well. It's an evolving space to be considered as well. If you look at video display, quite high scale, pragmatically accessible, anything from branding KPIs, your typical measurement pieces as well. We're seeing this explore outside of that in terms of, custom integrations, engagement in terms of the clickability of in-game ads, in terms of in-menu ads. So it's definitely an evolving space, right? So it's a quite exciting time to be watching this from a format perspective. Look, one example here is our partner at Castrol in the Philippines. That they wanted to reach, hardcore millennial motorists in the Philippines, and there was an alignment towards that audience and the gaming space in that market. So authentically, we produced a strategy here that used in-game advertising, as you can see on screen, and again, it produced some pretty impressive results when ran in that authentic and non-disruptive manner. Our research post-campaign said that 70% of respondents recalled seeing the ad successfully, but more importantly, 75% post-ad they recorded an action, right? Which is a clear winner for a new product launch as well. You want people to find out more. You want people to want to find out more and go to your owned and operated assets to do that, right? So clear winner there. And lastly, that demographic, that 25 plus demographic, showed the highest purchase intent. So you can start to see that this space in gaming itself, it yields interesting insights in terms of that business outcome, but when ran in a non-disruptive and in authentic manner, produces some great results. And look, in this emerging space, it's important to understand that scale and diversity is absolutely required, as it is in the gaming space today as well. Now, with respect to blended in-game advertising, we've partnered with 6 platforms on our exchange, over 50 publishers, and usually in some cases, one publisher might have 5 to 10 apps. So a lot of scale there in the diversity of applications. And look, in Australia, we see about 7 million ad requests per day. So it's definitely a scalable space to play in from an audience perspective, from a targeting perspective, measurement, so on and so forth. I think what's really interesting is, a lot of these platforms are ad tech businesses themselves. We've done a really interesting arrangement with Anzu that we have access to their platform and their inventory at a first call priority access, right? So we'll start to see these platforms develop their ad tech businesses over time and potentially, look at how Netflix would work with some of these platforms as well, which is where I see Netflix games definitely being headed. Going back to the insights and research in this emerging space, what categories of games are exploring blended in-game ads? What was interesting, we understood that your typical sports games, racing games, stadiums, racing tracks, with existing real estate would ideally probably come out on top in developing this new innovation. What was really interesting though with our partner AdMix is they found that hyper-casual games came out on top, right? So think of games like Candy Crush, right? Think of games like Words with Friends. Typically those games have rewarded video ad slots. They might have a playable ad experience as well. What we're now seeing is they're revamping their ad experience to suit blended in-game ads. But we'll start to see that in the next 3 to 6 months and beyond, given that this innovation meets that customer want and need. But it's interesting that the diversity in that space, right, is hyper-casual games, the demographic split 50-50, 45 to 55-year-olds, looking at that mid chart there, puzzle, simulation, sports and racing, otherwise known as sort of casual gaming apps. Again, an even split in gender and an 18 to 35-year-old plus split. So the diversity here speaks towards a brand marketer. These are audiences that you're wanting to reach and can now reach in a non-disruptive and in a space that they're actively playing on a day-to-day basis. And what's really interesting is that lower bracket of RPG, role-playing games, strategy, shooter games, typically your males 18 to 24, 25 plus, they're not as quickly developing blended in-game ad formats as some of those more broad and diverse audiences are, and audiences and games. And lastly, look, it's important to understand that some of this space, there might be questions that need to be answered. As with anything new and shiny in any space, those questions do need to be answered when you're considering time, resource investment, right? All the bells and whistles are effectively ticked. We're seeing all the necessities around audiences, impressions, validation, fraud protection, brand lift studies. Viewability can now be measured in-game, which is really exciting. You can start to see the effectiveness and what it actually drives off the back of that campaign, less so from a reach perspective, but also from now a viewability perspective. So, it's a very much an emerging space, but quite an exciting time to be looking at this from your planning and activation. And look, lastly, if it's mobile, it's really in Mobi. We've been around for almost 15 years now, in this market almost 10 years. We speak towards mobile from a unique perspective with our 15-year pedigree in the space. And look, if anyone wanting to find out more information, whether it's gaming or other, we sit around 4 pillars to our business, right? That's research, data, media, and also outcomes, all from a mobile perspective. And when you consider mobile being the lion's share of investment in terms of digital, but also the lion's share in terms of mobile and so in terms of audiences across your planning, it's important to have that mobile specialist when it comes to that conversation, those questions that need to be answered, and so on and so forth. And particularly around gaming as this new and emerging space. So three key takeaways. Look, gaming is evolving once again. We're seeing that in blended in-game ad formats. Don't be the mistake that Nokia did at that time and let that innovation pass you by, right? Latch onto this innovation, doing it in an authentic manner can produce those very impressive results. As I said before, developers and customers, they want the same thing, right? So this inflection point is a huge opportunity now for brands to capitalize on. And again, but doing that in an authentic and relevant manner that fits in towards that customer mindset. And then, as I said, leverage in Mobi's expertise. We've got a 15-year mobile pedigree that sits around research, data, media, and outcomes. So do leverage our skill set to understand and identify and look at planning and activating against those audiences that are now the overwhelming majority of Australians. But doing it so that you have scale and diversity at the forefront. That is key when it comes to gaming. Doing it in a pigeonholed manner, it can work, but it doesn't have the effectiveness that you would want from a new and emerging space to be considered. And look, if you want to find out more about gaming, feel free to email us at mobilemarketing@inmobi.com or write to myself at the email you're seeing on screen. I'm always happy to talk about gaming, whether it's your favorite game, what's coming up in the gaming world, or help you understand, how you can take that first leap and that first step into this exciting space. Thanks.
That brings us to the end of our Australian session. We hope you thoroughly enjoyed Matt's insights. In case you have any questions for us, don't forget to reach out to us at mobilemarketing@inmobi.com or on LinkedIn, and we'd be happy to take the conversation ahead. We have one more session left in this summit as we deep dive into the Indonesian universe of gaming. We'll see you there.